Now, if you want a beautiful, clean aquarium, it is important to have tools that make that job easy. So having like a good thing for scrubbing, you just want to have like a range of tools that do the job very efficiently, because you'll find that the difference between one scrubber and another scrubber can make a massive difference, and it can affect your motivation to clean the tank, because effective tools make cleaning your tank so much easier. So when you are servicing your aquarium, it's really important that you don't let areas go stagnate. For example, this plant here, when I pulled it out, it had a really terrible smell. And the reason why it had a terrible smell, there was a whole lot of junk caught in within this plant. So when that came out, and I've since given it a shake, got all the crap out of it. But you want to try and agitate things around and not let things go stagnant. So leaving this, so giving that a clean and leaving it in the sun for a day, and then switching it over and leaving it for another day. And I think you'll get some life out of that one. But I think these two are ready for the bin, because fake plants are something that you do replace over time. And considering this tank's got silver dollars in it, you're not going to think about live plants, because they're just going to eat them like spaghetti. So for increased biological capacity, we could fit some more biological media in here. Going for the marine pure is by far the best. But more biological capacity means more bacteria, and that means that we should get that nitrite level down, and will allow you to have a larger capacity for breaking down fish waste. Now I'll round up these extra marine pure balls and I'll put them in the filter, but let's just say that you didn't have room in the filter. The balls do actually just work in the bottom of the aquarium as well. So leaving them in the bottom of the aquarium is a valid place for them to be. But in this case, I can put them in the filter so you don't have to see them. But these work just like a compost heap, growing parallel nitrifying and denitrifying bacteria. So if you didn't have enough room in your filter and you hid a bunch of these in the back of the aquarium, as long as there's still water flow and oxygen, then they do still work. They're a good idea to increase your biological capacity. So when you're filling up your water, you want to make some attempt to make sure the water's not too cold, but whatever you do, don't make it too hot. You really want to test it, and you want to do a water change and make sure the water's going in. It's as similar as possible to the main tank, but don't hot flush them. Now, when you're adding your new water, there's three things we want to be aware of. The first thing is that all new water going into the aquarium really needs to have a water ager, because the water ager will take the chlorine, chloramone and so forth out of the water. That must go in every time. Now, over time, we do tend to need to raise carbonate hardness as well. So we're going to raise it today by adding some KH in there. And then when you add KH, it's much better to add a little bit at a time. I'd rather add a little bit and then get it checked in a few days, and then add a little bit and get it checked in a few days. You don't want to shock it up. Otherwise, you can cause all sorts of trouble. Do not overdose these products. The GH, on the other hand, isn't as important as far as shocking them and putting it up. You can put that up a bit faster, but I put in water change. I put in GH every time I do a water change, but I do not add GH if I'm just topping up, because the GH won't tend to go down. The KH will go down. So this one every time, that one only for water changes, and that one for water changes or if you are finding your KH level going down. So they're your three main levels that need to be monitored on a semi-regular basis. The other ones, you just want to make sure you bring a sample of water into Majestic Aquariums at least once a quarter so we can check on. So the other main ones we're going to be looking at is ammonia and nitrite. They're going to be checking if your filtration is effective. Then nitrate is going to find out whether you're doing enough water changes. And then your pH is finding out if your water's going too acidic. And then your KH and GH are things over time that absolutely need monitoring. The other thing I really advise is get yourself a really good magnet cleaner. A weak little one, they don't really do much. I would recommend getting a Flipper Max. They're not the cheapest thing you'll ever buy in the world, but how quickly and efficiently they clean your glass. They're really worth it. You never want to undersize your magnet cleaner, because they're just not as effective. A good magnet cleaner is the sort of thing that makes your life easy. Now, because this aquarium hasn't been serviced for a while, it is very common that I service the aquarium, I make it a lot cleaner, I make it a lot healthier, but when I leave, it actually looks worse than when I got there. And that's because you're stirring up all of the waste, and it's going to take time for that to filter out. So once this stabilizes, the aquarium will be much cleaner than it was, but right now it looks significantly worse. The other risk you've got is tanks that aren't serviced do have a risk of hydrogen sulfide. So I've disturbed the back of the aquarium here and lots of crap has come out. Now, if that crap has not been serviced for a long time and it's gone anoxic, it's possible that hydrogen sulfide has built up in anoxic bacteria, and that can discharge hydrogen sulfide, which is actually poisonous. Oh, look, there's the coolie loach. There he is. He's such a cool little fish. Now, the polyfilter, if put into the filter, will also help to remove hydrogen sulfide and will reduce that risk. So we've moved the air stone away from the filter inlet, and we've also moved the power head to the top. It's all reflection, but there's a power head there, because what we really want to see is that surface getting agitated, and then that's going to increase our dissolved oxygen level and redox potential. But once some more fake plants go in there, probably one more service, and then start chucking some more fish in there, and it'll be a ripper. Now, the other thing too is with these tanks, if you find you've got the aquarium in a certain position and you're not getting a lot of value out of it as far as the whole family is concerned, then moving the aquarium into another room is sometimes like getting a new aquarium. But one thing I will say is, particularly with these curved glass aquariums, it is super important that you level it. Because when an aquarium settles, that's fine. But when you move it to another spot, if the spot you move it to is slightly different in angle, you'll end up cracking the aquarium. And particularly with these ones, because you've got one big sheet of glass, and basically what happens is if your floor is not completely level, which mind you, most floors are not, then this becomes a leverage. So you actually get leverage on a weak point. So these tanks are nowhere near as strong. If they're on a flat level surface, they're totally fine. But if they're not on a flat level surface, particularly if you move them and it's slightly not level, crack. Just get ready. Because if that bit's slightly up and the glass goes around, that creates leverage for that to crack. Whereas if it's just one pane of glass, the strength in one flat pane of glass with a little bit of give from silicon is actually significant. Whereas these ones here have zero give, so they definitely crack more easily. And most companies don't produce these tanks anymore because too many people do put them on not flat level surfaces, and they do actually crack. So this aquarium, sooner than later, could do with another service, and that will help to remove all the waste that has been disturbed in this particular service. Now, the other thing is we are about to put polyfilter in the aquarium, and that's going to go up in the top filter. And polyfilter is amazing stuff. It works really well for adsorbing and absorbing anything impure out of the water, all your dissolved nutrients, all your accumulants and stuff like that. Now, polyfilter is not filter wool. Now, filter wool is just mechanical and it just traps crap. And then the more often you replace your filter wool, the more efficient it is. Whereas the polyfilter, you can leave it in there for months until it turns black, and then you just chuck it out. So you'll find that once people try the real polyfilter, there is no fake polyfilter. You want the real polyfilter. There's lots of products that advertise them as being like a polyfilter, but this is the one you want. And it really lowers your maintenance. You find that you're able to get away with so much more when you've got that in there. A lot of people often ask whether polyfilter's got a top and a bottom, and it sort of does, but it doesn't actually make much difference. You'll notice the harder side I want away from the water flow, and the softer side I want towards the water flow. Doesn't actually make a whole lot of difference though. So now that we've got the polyfilter in here, that's going to start collecting all of the waste, and then we do want to over time sort of shift the polyfilter around just so it's not just those same bits getting dirty. Otherwise, it will tend to just sort of clog up around here where the waste just can't make its way out. So every now and then, just sort of give this a little bit of a, even if you cut a bit and slide it around, so you're getting some more fresh parts on the polyfilter. And then you throw it away once it turns black. So next service, this will improve dramatically, and the sooner the better. So preferably another service in a week or so would be a really good idea for cleaning this tank up. But as a minimum, cleaning it once a month would be our recommendation. Now, the other thing is the less the light is on, the less algae you tend to get. And the less direct sunlight, the less algae you tend to get. So if your tank's dirty, try to keep your light off, particularly if you don't have live plants. And air pumps have got to have check valves unless they're on top of the aquarium. So on top is like that, this is okay. But if it goes down underneath, you need a check valve, or the water can go back into the pump and blow it up. And try and make sure that your air pump isn't vibrating on anything. So in this case, I've just put it on a piece of polyfilter, and that's made it significantly quieter. Before that, it was making a sound. But if you don't want to see the air pump and you want to put it down the cupboard, that's okay. But once again, put it on something so it's not vibrating. And polyfilter is really good. It takes away the vibrations in your pump. And you can put check valves on and put it down the bottom so you don't have to see it. And also there's less chance of it falling off or falling into the aquarium. So having it on top is actually the best place for it, except it doesn't look good, and it can fall off and it can fall in.